The House will come to order. Members, please take their seats. Sergeant at Arms.
The House is now in session. All persons not entitled to privileges of the floor, please retire to the gallery.
The members will rise and be led in prayer by Rabbi Cantor Ellen Jaffragil, spiritual leader, Tidewater, Havdurah, Virginia Beach, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which will be led by the delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Tomorrow, as we celebrate the Sabbath in the synagogue, Jews around the world will read that section of the Hebrew Bible containing the dramatic prologue to and recitation of the Ten Commandments. But the Torah portion is named not for the Ten Commandments, but for the father-in-law of Moses, Yitro. You know him as Jethro. And his role in this reading is even more relevant to the deliberations of this legislature than that of its most famous passage. It is Yitro who instructs Moses, already overwhelmed just a few weeks after the exodus from Egypt, to appoint chiefs of tens, chiefs of 50s, chiefs of 100, and chiefs of thousands, to delegate responsibility to trusted compatriots and to establish a kind of representative structure that might bring order to the varied factions within the mixed multitude and that creates small enough groups so that everyone receives a hearing. Holy One of Blessing, as you did Yitro, please guide the women and men of this body with your good counsel. Help them truly to hear what their constituents have to say and to act in their best interests. Havinem mishpatei tzidchecha, bring them the rules of your justice. Be their partner in ensuring the well-being of our Commonwealth and all its residents. And let us say, Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The members will answer the roll call by indicating their presence on the electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll.
Mr. Speaker, a quorum is present.
Pursuant to House Rule 3, I've examined and approved the Journal of the House of Delegates for January the 24th, 2019. Motions and resolutions under Rule 39 pursuant to the provisions of Rule 40 are now in order. The clerk shall announce the first morning hour of business, including any clerk's announcements and communications.
No announcements or communications, Mr. Speaker, so therefore members' introductions and other points that's listed on the board are now in order.
Delegate from Charlottesville, Delegate Toscano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request permission to take the center aisle for a center aisle presentation. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. May I request that I be joined by all the University of Virginia graduates at the center aisle. Thank you.
Clerk will report a resolution.
House Resolution number 225, commending the University of Virginia, agreed to January 18th by the House.
The delegate from Charlottesville, Delegate Toscano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. This resolution we passed last week honoring UVA and on its 200th anniversary. And we have with us today several folks from UVA who've given so much for that to that institution. We have Rusty Connor, the present rector of UVA. We have the new president, Jim Ryan, here. We have the vice rector, James Murray. And we have Colette Sheehy, the vice president. And I thought, do we have anyone else back there? Oh, Bobby, yes. Dr. Bobby Battle, who is the chair of the Bicentennial Commission. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, we have this wonderful proclamation commending resolution, which has also been presented over in the Senate. But we do things differently in the House. I am not going to read all of the paragraphs like they did over in the Senate, because you can read them yourself. But I would like to say a few, plus I can't read this type, it's so small because of my glasses. But I would like to say a few words just to draw your attention to the significance of this university and how it evolved. Sometimes it takes a while to get a lot of good things done. And Jefferson had this vision that he articulated back in 1802 in a letter to Charles Peel. He said he wanted to create a non-sectarian public university that would be among the best in the country. Now, it took him a little while to be able to get there. In 1817, he brought together a group of people who wanted to make the argument for a public university, but it took him until 1819 to get a charter issued by the General Assembly, who says we do things fast around here. But the charter was issued on January 25th, 1819, and I think that's today. So it's been 400 years, and during that 400 years, there has been so much to celebrate with this public institution. 200 years. I went to law school. They don't teach you math in law school. So we all know it is consistently ranked among the best public universities in the country and in the world. It's also consistently ranked as the best value institution in the United States. That's because of our largesse here in the General Assembly, partly, and because we have such great people who raise lots of money to help UVA. It's been on the cutting edge of a lot of wonderful things over the years. The most recent is it just got a major grant to establish a school of data science, which is going to put UVA in a position to really lead in that arena. Beyond that, it's got a sports program that is second to none. I've been told I cannot talk about the University of Virginia basketball team, but we know what that team is doing. But the most important part of this sports program is not only do they win titles, but the student athletes graduate at higher levels at almost any place in the country. And that's a testament to how UVA does. Now the university is ready to take itself to the next level with Jim Ryan coming on as the president and returning to UVA after many years at another institution that was just a little bit older than UVA up in Boston, but he saw the error of his ways and he's come back to UVA to lead us in the next decades. So with that, I'd like to present this commending resolution to the folks here, and I hope that you will honor them and welcome them to the Capitol today.
It's a very special day, President Ryan, and want to thank you for coming and the celebration of the 200th anniversary of UVA. And I think you can see by all the people standing behind you, we have many proud alumni of UVA. So just thanks what your leadership has done, and we just look forward to another 200 years. The delegate from Newport News, Delegate Yancey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise for an announcement.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and members, give you a heads up. The week of February the 4th through the 8th, the Department of Motor Vehicles To-Go Mobile Customer Service Center will be at the Capitol and will offer all DMV transactions, including applications for the new Virginia Real ID. Beginning October 1st, 2020, Virginians will need a Real ID, compliant credential, or another federally approved form of identification, such as a U.S. passport or some military ID, to board a domestic flight to enter a secured federal facility. Mr. Speaker, I will give another announcement in time.
Delegate will proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will give another announcement as we get closer to it, but I just want to let the members know, and if you'd like to share that with your constituents when they visit to the Capitol for that week, I think it would be a very good thing for all. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your time.
Delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Turpin.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you. Today's invocation was given by Rabbi Ellen Jaffe Gill, spiritual leader of Tidewater Kavurah in Virginia Beach. Is a former teacher and a book author who has spoken across the United States to community audiences. She has delivered blessings many times in interfaith, civic, and governmental settings, most recently providing the invocation at the Women's March this past Saturday. Married to a Norfolk native and a Virginia resident since 2014, Rabbi Jaffe Gill is active in social justice activities locally and statewide. Please join me in thanking Rabbi Jaffe Gill for her warm and stirring invocation.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My fellow delegates, I'd like to recognize Troop 1769. Would they stand up, please? Aren't they wonderful? This is a Girl Scout troop based out of Colvin Run Elementary School in Vienna, Virginia. These young women are here in Richmond today to learn about the government and what it takes to be an active citizen. And they will get their inside government badge as part of this visitation here. So many wonderful women leaders have been Girl Scouts. In fact, 73% of the women in our U.S. Senate have been Girl Scouts. And I was a Girl Scout. I would bet a few more of us here were too. It's wonderful to see these young women getting involved and caring about their community and their government. And I'm very, very happy that they're here visiting us today. So I'd like you to give them a warm house welcome.
We'd certainly like to welcome Girl Scout Troop 1769 at the Capitol and hope you enjoy your visit. The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, since, Mr. Speaker, you ascended to the role of Speaker, the House of Delegates has been in dire need of an effective majority leader. Luckily, we have one with us today in the form of our old friend and now congressman from the fighting 9th Congressional District in Southwest Virginia, whose son Davis is serving us as a page this year. And well, I'll leave the furlough jokes to everybody else, but Mr. Speaker, we are more than happy always to see our good friend, the Honorable Congressman Morgan Griffith, with us today.
Morgan, it's great to have you with us today. I don't think anyone probably loves this institution more and loves the rules more than Morgan Griffith. The delegate from Enrico, Delegate Rodman.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a motion.
Delegate has the floor.
I move that HB 1693 on page 30 of the calendar be re-referred to the Committee on Education.
Delegate Rodman moves that HB 1693 be re-referred to the Committee of Education. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That motion carries and that bill is re-referred. Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an announcement.
Delegate has the floor.
Okay. I hear groans behind me already. So go ahead and make noises, all of you who have not contributed to the food drive, but why don't you go home and get food and then you don't have to make noises? So please contribute. I know. Okay, I'll be more formal. Please contribute to the Feed More food drive. You all know that it is a necessary service that Feed More provides, especially with the federal shutdown. So I thank those of you who have already contributed, and for those who do want to contribute, be happy to take your picture and blow it up really big and bring it here next Friday. Thank you.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Tron.
Hello, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. I rise for an introduction.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker and members of the House, today in the gallery we are joined by a second Girl Scout troop, troop number 52033. Please stand. Troop 52033 includes students from West Springfield High School and South County High School, and they live in the 42nd District. This morning, the troop had the opportunity to hear me defend a bill in front of the Transportation Subcommittee number 4 and truly experience our government at work. While my bill did not receive a favorable vote, I'm honored to have the opportunity for my constituents to see how we thoughtfully have conversations about really key policy issues facing Virginia. We've had a chance to talk about my role serving them as their delegate, and they've also got to tour our state capitol and learn about how our government functions. As you may recall, earlier this week, I had constituents from Cub Scout Pack 1683 also visit our capitol. So I'm really honored to represent these engaged and promising scouts who I'm certain will make our Commonwealth a better place. So our Girl Scouts today are joined by several of their moms who we all know do a lot of hard work and a lot of love to have the girls have a rewarding scouting experience. And so please join me in giving Girl Scout Troop 52033 and their moms a warm house welcome.
The House would certainly like to welcome the Girl Scouts from Troop 52033 and their moms to the Capitol and hope you enjoy your visit. The delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Converse Fowler.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
Delegate has the floor.
Today, I am pleased to introduce Councilmember David Nygaard of the Virginia Beach City Council. Councilmember Nygaard's currently working on priorities in Virginia Beach on the City Council include flood mitigation, developing the local economy and creating more jobs, taking action against human trafficking, and working on solutions for the opioid crisis. Councilmember Nygaard is an alumnus of the College of William and Mary and Regent University, has served on the advisory committee of the Entrepreneurship Center at the Mason School of Business, and taught entrepreneurship and business classes at Chowan University. I hope that my colleagues will give Councilmember David Nygaard a warm house welcome.
I'd certainly like to welcome Councilman Nygaard to the Capitol. Pursuant to House Rule 30, the Journal shall reflect that the following members are away on pressing personal business and are granting leave from today's session: Delegates Bell of Loudoun and Delegate Bourne. The clerk shall announce the next order of business.
Second morning hour order of business are member requests to move legislation from any uncontested calendar to the regular calendar. Mr. Speaker, there are several on House Bill's third reading uncontested, or page 2 of the printed calendar. Delegate Oroch's House Bill 1679 has been asked to be moved to the regular calendar by Delegate Herring. And turning to the category of Senate bills, second reading uncontested. That is not a live portion of the calendar today, but it's on page 32 of the printed calendar. Senator Ruff's SB 1255 has been requested to be moved to the regular calendar for future consideration. That's been done by Delegates Freitas and Carter. Mr. Speaker, that's all I have at this time.
The clerk shall announce the next order of business.
The third morning hour order of business or member requests for legislation to go by for the day, if any. Subsequent motion by Majority Leader. There are just a couple. On page 20 and 21 of the printed calendar, under the category of House Bill second reading uncontested, Delegate Bourne's House Bill 1922 and House Bill 1924. Both of those have been requested to go by for the day by Delegate Herring. And on page 30 of the printed calendar, same category, House Bill second reading regular, under the category of second reading regular, Delegate Rasool's House Bill 1635 has been requested to go by for the day by Delegate Weber.
Delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the legislation announced by the clerk go by for the day.
Delegate from Richmond, Delegate Adams, you had your light on. Did you want to comment on one of those bills?
You can always.
My apologies. I thought that this was already taken care of. I apologize.
Delegate Adams, you can take it back when it comes up if you can.
Sorry.
Oh, it's in the third block. Okay, I'm sorry.
Thomas's bill?
Page 8, 2138.
2138, HB 2138, if it could be moved from the uncontested calendar to the regular calendar. Thank you.
Okay, so 2138 will be moved to the regular calendar. The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert, moves that the legislation that's announced by the clerk go by for the day. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will announce the next order of business.
Mr. Speaker, the fourth portion of the morning hour is reserved for members' requests for points of personal privilege.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members of the House, when I got back to my office in Pocahontas yesterday, I was struck by the irony when I looked at my desk of finding my W-2 form. I bet most of you got yours as well. The W-2 is, of course, the official start to the tax season. It's thrilling for some, chilling for most of us. But receiving our W-2 is a very real reminder that in just 3 days, tax season starts. Virginians will begin filing their 2018 tax returns on Monday. And if past form holds, Mr. Speaker, within a week of that date, the Commonwealth's Department of Taxation will have received over 500,000 returns. This is normally a very smooth process, but the General Assembly this year has failed to act, despite knowing of the short timeline that we have. We have jeopardized the entire collection process, potentially throwing filing season into chaos and needlessly delaying the refunds that many of our constituents, Mr. Speaker, are expecting and on which many of them rely. Imagine, members of the House, being a federal employee, being forced right now to work despite receiving no paycheck. Or you've been furloughed. You file your taxes on time, or maybe even early since you have a little extra time on your hands, and you've put much more than you usually do on credit cards, maybe missed a mortgage payment or two, or you're having trouble paying for childcare. Well, now another check is at risk because this body hasn't acted. Mr. Speaker, since Virginia first conformed to the federal tax code in 1972, this has always been an easy bipartisan issue, typically the very first thing we do every session. We can still come together, Mr. Speaker, to get this done because it's the right thing to do and because our constituents are depending on us. Failure to conform in a timely manner could bring about a host of unintended consequences for the Commonwealth. If we continue to wait, and ultimately do not pass conformity, it could take up to 6 weeks for tax to change the necessary forms and make all the processing adjustments that they need to make. The result will be more errors, further delays, and reprocessing of any early returns. And many of our constituents, Mr. Speaker, will have to go through the time, hassle, and expense of filing amended returns. People are depending on these refunds, and people are depending on us. Now, no one in this body, I expect, likes filing taxes, despite what some people on the other side of the aisle might think. Democrats hate to pay taxes just as much as Republicans do. This Democrat sure does. Aside from the money, of course, even in a good year, it's a confusing and frustrating process. But as things stand now, Mr. Speaker, we're poised to make things even worse. We can save our constituents a lot of time and frustration if we simply do what we have always done. Mr. Speaker, this is beginning to look, to me at least, too much like what's afflicting our friends up the road in Washington, where our representatives are letting real people get stuck in the political crossfire. Let's meet our core responsibilities, Mr. Speaker, and remember the Virginia way. Let's work on a bipartisan basis to get this job done for Virginia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Arlington, Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are 178,000 federal employees in the Commonwealth of Virginia. 35,000 Arlingtonians, tens of thousands of Fairfax citizens work for the federal government, and countless federal contractors. Thousands of my constituents, my neighbors, and my friends in the 49th District haven't been paid in over a month and are struggling right now. Families' livelihoods are at stake with this government shutdown. Our economy and thousands of Virginians are dependent upon federal spending. And when the government shuts down, that is jeopardized. From small business owners to farmers, the shutdown has hurt folks in every corner of the Commonwealth. Everything from processing tax refunds to food inspections to loan approvals are being affected. What does this mean for real Virginians? Real Virginia families? The Department of Agriculture doesn't have funding to pay food stamp benefits come March. The Department of Agriculture doesn't have money come March to pay food stamp benefits for 736,000 Virginians. Public housing inspections have stalled for 15,600 families in Virginia who are in subsidized housing where faulty elevators, moldy air ducts, and broken washers and dryers won't be fixed. Section 8 rental assistance vouchers are being delayed for 29,000 Virginia families, and there is a backlog on homeless assistance grants. Without resources, domestic violence shelters are imperiled. Several airline associations recently wrote, in our risk-averse industry, we cannot even calculate the level of risk currently at play, nor predict the point at which the entire system will break. It is unprecedented. And as of this morning, LaGuardia, Newark, and Philadelphia airports are experiencing ground stops, delays, and flight turnarounds due to staffing issues. Would-be homeowners can't reach the federal programs that they can make their dream of home ownership a reality. USDA rural loans are on hold until further notice. Schools are not receiving needed funding. The Arlington Food Assistance Center is experiencing gaps in their ability to pay, or in their ability to provide food for needy citizens of Arlington. Some federal workers are choosing between paying for their medicine or paying their mortgage. Some federal workers in Virginia are choosing between paying for their medicine or paying for their mortgage. It's been 34 days, and folks are missing another paycheck, and they are scared. People not being paid means they don't buy, which means creditors and retailers don't have income, which means they can't pay their employees, and so on and so on. Adding insult to injury, the 800,000 federal employees affected by the shutdown were warned yesterday that they have to pay their dental and vision premiums beginning this week or they could lose their coverage. Let me repeat that. Adding insult to injury, the 800,000 federal employees affected by the shutdown were warned yesterday that they've got to pay their dental and vision premiums, even though they're not getting a paycheck, or they could lose their coverage. The 2019 Trump shutdown is putting Virginia families who receive basic needs assistance at risk, Mr. Speaker. It's threatening the lives and dreams of thousands of Virginians. We owe it to them, for all of us, Republicans and Democrats, to call on the president to finally end this nonsense once and for all. Open up the federal government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Powhatan, Delegate Ware. No. Delegate from Newport News, Delegate Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Buckle up. It's history time again here in the House. This year marks the 400th anniversary of representative democracy in the New World. This being such a momentous occasion, we in this body will return to our spawning grounds on Jamestown Island this July to commemorate. When we do, we'll come back to the Memorial Church. Mr. Speaker, this is actually the 6th church to have been seated on such sacred ground. The first was built in 1607 and on the grounds of Jamestown Fort. It was a raggedy, nasty earthen thing that even Captain John Smith had some really unkind words to say about. After it burned the following year, the second church was built in its place. This one was made of wood. It was that building that Pocahontas was married to John Rolfe in 1614. The third church was probably the most important to this body. About 3 years later, a new brick structure was built, and it was in this place that Governor Samuel Argall called the first House of Burgesses together in 1619. I would just note that the first meeting was 22 Burgesses and the governor, and it was already packed in that space. I'm saying this just to prepare everybody in this body for the fact that we're going to have 140 people in the same space. It's going to get a little cramped. A new church was built in its place afterwards, and the fourth church was actually burned during Bacon's Rebellion in 1676. For those counting at home, we are now on the fifth church on the same site on Jamestown Island. It was built in 1686 and fell into ruins by the late 18th century. It was pulled down and used for building a wall, actually, in about 1790. The current Memorial Church was built in 1907 and reused the original 1639 tower. In 2016, our friends at Jamestown Rediscovery removed the brick floor, and what they found underneath was remarkable. Just below these bricks lay the foundations of the 1617 and 1614 churches built on the same site, as well as a cellar dating back to the extension of the original fort of 1607. As part of this excavation, this past summer, the remains of a person we think was Virginia's second governor, George Yardley, was actually found. Interestingly enough, the FBI, as well as the Smithsonian, are working with us right now to be able to identify that body, which, in all honesty, is pretty darn cool. Mr. Speaker, I'll tell everyone in this body that we will be coming back to Jamestown in just a few months. We will be sitting on sacred ground, even if we do so in a little bit more of a cramped style.
Delegate from Caroline, Delegate Orrock.
Mr. Speaker, point of personal privilege.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I've sat here for several days now hearing comments relative to the federal shutdown and how such a dereliction of the duty of our federal government it has been that has led us to this point. But, Mr. Speaker, when I sat here this morning and heard aspersions that this is the Trump shutdown, Mr. Speaker, that's the problem. The problem in Washington is each side is trying to blame the other. It is no more a Trump shutdown than it is a Pelosi shutdown. It is a shutdown because they have lost the ability to compromise. And for anyone on this floor to, in making comments which I have agreed to each and every day as to the effects it is having on Virginia citizens, to try and make some political tool out of that, I think is not in keeping what we, for every day and every year that I've been a part of this body, has been to claim the Virginia way, which doesn't play partisan games with people's lives. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, to the circumstances going on in Washington, and all due respect to my dear, dear friend who's a visitor here today, because I know he's not a part of the problem because he knows what the word compromise means, to those in Washington who cannot compromise regardless of party, stripe, flavor, color, a pox on both your houses. We all took an oath, state and federal, to uphold the Constitution, which means we are bound to do the people's will. And that is not what's going on now as a result we see with this federal shutdown. But may we, Mr. Speaker, on this floor, not take circumstances beyond our control, circumstances going on north of the Potomac, and try and make political hay in this body and in this state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The clerk will call the calendar.
Calendar for today, Friday, January 25th, 2019. First category of business, House bills on third reading uncontested calendar. Page 1, there are approximately 4 dozen bills in the uncontested third reading block as follows. House Bill 1622. Turn to page 2. House Bill 1673, 1674. House Bill 1679 on page 2 of the printed calendar has been moved to the regular calendar and out of the block. Continuing with the block. House Bill 1712, 1751, 1767. Turning to page 4. Continuing with the block. House Bill 1788, 1835, 1909, 1930, 1933, 1940. Turning to page 6. Continuing with the block. House Bills 1950, 1954, 1955, 1974, 1998, 2021. Turn to page 8. Continuing with the block, House Bill 2078, 2136. House Bill 2138 on page 8 of the printed calendar has been removed from the block and over to the regular calendar. Continuing with the block, page 9 of the printed calendar, House Bill 2143, 2167, 2181. Turning to page 10, House Bills 2197, 2242, 2262, 2289, 2347, 2358. Turning to page 12, continuing, House Bills third reading uncontested calendar block, House Bills 2362, 2365, 2417, 2439, 2452, 2453, turn to page 14. House Bills 2464, 2484, 2526, 2648, 2651, 2659. And Mr. Speaker, turning to page 16 of the printed calendar, House Bills 2665, 2666, and finally, the last bill in the block, third reading uncontested, House Bill 2699. I can read.
Shall the bill is passed? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 97, no 0.
Ayes 97, no 0. The bill is passed.
Mr. Speaker, continuing with today's calendar, the next category of business, House bills on third reading, regular calendar. Page 17, there are 11 bills in this category, 13 bills in this category. Beginning with, on page 17 of the printed calendar, House Bill 2028, relating to legislation increasing or beginning regulation of an occupation evaluation required.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 90, no 7.
Ayes 90, no 7. The bill passes.
House Bill 2003, relating to major business facility jobs tax credit, sunset reporting requirements.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 90, no 7.
Ayes 90, no 7. The bill passes.
House Bill 2060, relating to real estate with delinquent taxes or liens, appointment of special commissioner, increase required value.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 80, noes 17.
Ayes 80, noes 17. The bill passes.
Continuing third reading, regular, page 18 of the printed calendar, House Bill 2222, relating to local school boards display advertising material on school buses.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 68, noes 29.
68, noes 29. The bill passes.
House Bill 2404, relating to transient occupancy tax, certain counties.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 62, noes 35.
Ayes 62, noes 35. The bill fails to pass.
Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
I rise for a motion.
Delegate Essa-4.
Mr. Speaker, having voted on the prevailing side by which we failed to pass House Bill 2404, I move that we reconsider that vote.
Delegate Gilbert moves that having voted on the prevailing side of the House reconsider the vote by which it failed to pass House Bill 2404. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion passes and that bill is reconsidered.
Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
I rise for another motion.
Delegate Essa-4.
Mr. Speaker, I move that that bill go by for the day.
Delegate Gilbert moves the bill go by for the day. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. That bill goes by for the day.
Continuing on page 18, House Bills third reading regular. Next up, House Bill 2405, relating to real estate with delinquent taxes or liens, appointment of special commissioner, City of Martinsville.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 88, noes 8.
Ayes 88, noes 8. The bill passes.
House Bill 2539, relating to sunset for worker retraining tax credit, worker training investment tax credit.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 88, noes 9.
Ayes 88, noes 9. The bill passes.
House Bill 2555, relating to local gas severance tax sunset date.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 83, noes 14.
Ayes 83, noes 14. The bill passes.
House Bill 2705, relating to historic rehabilitation tax credit.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 94, noes 2, abstentions 1.
Ayes 94, noes 2, abstentions 1. The bill passes.
Turning to page 20, continuing House Bills third reading regular, House Bill 1656, relating to school security officers, private or religious schools carrying a firearm in performance of duties.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 78, noes 16.
Ayes 78, noes 16. The bill passes.
House Bill 2180, relating to the Semiconductor Manufacturing Grant Fund creation.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 91, noes 5.
Ayes 91, noes 5. The bill passes.
Mr. Speaker, returning to page 2, of the printed calendar, page 2, bill before us, House Bill 1679, relating to taxation of all-terrain vehicles, mopeds, and off-road motorcycles.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 82, noes 12, abstentions 1.
Ayes 82, noes 12, abstentions 1. The bill passes.
And going forward to page 8 of the printed calendar, last bill in this category, House Bill 2138, relating to prohibited inhalants of others or other noxious chemical substances, fluorinated hydrocarbons or vapors, hydrogenated fluorocarbons.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 85, noes 12.
Ayes 85, noes 12. The bill passes.
Continuing with today's calendar, page 20 of the printed version, category House Bills on second reading uncontested calendar, approximately 2 dozen bills in this block. House Bills 1922 and 1924, both have been taken by for the day. Therefore, the first bill before us is House Bill 1637. It is a bill to authorize the issuance of special license plates for supporters of the Virginia Aquarium bearing the legend, Protect Sea Life, fees. The bill is reported to the Committee on Transportation with an amendment.
The delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Knight.
Mr. Speaker, I move the amendment.
Shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee amendment is agreed to. Delegate Knight.
Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1637 is a license plate bill that says to protect sea life, and it actually supports the Virginia Aquarium. I move the House engross the bill and move to its third reading.
House Bill 1709, a bill to authorize the issuance of special license plates for supporters of Virginia State Parks bearing the legend, Virginia State Parks, fees. Bill is reported to the Committee on Transportation.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Bulova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. House Bill 1709 establishes a new license plate celebrating our Virginia State Parks. Mr. Speaker, in addition to being a beautiful design, this license plate is a great way for Virginians to both show their pride in our excellent park system and to help them out financially. I'd move that we engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Turning to page 22, HB 1743 is a bill to amend and reenact one section of the code relating to pharmacists, counseling for new prescriptions, disposal of medicine. The bill is reported to the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Bulova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 1743 is a recommendation of the Joint Commission on Health Care. The bill adds proper drug disposal to the list of items that a pharmacist may counsel a patient when presenting a new prescription. One of the key statistics cited in a study conducted by the Joint Commission is that about 2/3 of prescriptions are not consumed, and about 54% of those unused prescriptions are kept in the home, which increases the risk that those unused prescriptions will be either abused or accidentally consumed by children. Mr. Speaker, I would move that we engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
HB 1914 is a bill to amend and reenact section of the code relating to requirements for issuing prescriptions, exceptions for public health practitioners. Bill is reported to the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 1914 does two things. First, it amends the language to ensure consistency with language used around the provision of expedited partner therapy to reflect the intent that both employees and contractors of the Virginia Department of Health and locally administered health departments would be covered by the statute. The second thing that the bill does is that it authorizes the local health department practitioners to provide post-exposure prophylactics to expose individuals for conditions that would pose an imminent risk of death, life-threatening illness, or serious disability. The bill provides an exception to the physical examination requirement for VDH practitioners to allow the provision for the medicine when there is an urgent need for such treatment. The bill does not change the current requirement to obtain a medical or drug history and perform the appropriate patient counseling regarding the benefits and risks of prescribed medicine, and then initiate an additional intervention and follow-up if necessary. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed on to its third reading.
Next up in the block, House Bill 1952, which amends and reenact portions of the Code of Virginia relating to patient care team podiatrist definition, physician assistant definition, and supervision requirements. Bill's report for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions with amendment nature of a substitute.
Delegate from Smith, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee substitute is agreed to. Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this bill simply transitions the supervision of physician assistants from under the direct supervision of a physician or a podiatrist to a team-based approach, more in line and analogous with what we do with nurse practitioners in Virginia. The substitute would provide for a delayed enactment clause to allow the Board of Medicine to promulgate regulations in support of the same. It would be the will of the House to engross the bill and pass it to its third reading.
House Bill 1971. It is a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to health professions and facilities, adverse action in another jurisdiction, suspension, and reinstatement. The bill is reported for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Stolle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bills 1971 corrects a problem of circular mandatory suspension of licensures. With this legislation, health profession boards are not required to suspend licenses based solely on the action taken by another state. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, this bill also extends for the Board of Pharmacy from 30 to 60 days time to provide for a hearing after a mandatory suspension. I move the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
HB 2045 is a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services certification of recovery residences. Bill is reported for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions with amendment nature of substitute.
The delegate from Montgomery, Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Committee substitute is agreed to. Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2045 amends the Code of Virginia to establish a formal definition and requirements for recovery residences operated in Virginia. Specifically, the bill defines recovery residents and certified recovery residents and enables the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services to adopt certifying standards. It establishes a voluntary certification process for recovery residences and requires DBHDS to post on its website a list of certified recovery residences. By having this resource in place, law enforcement, courts, community services boards, families, and those seeking long-term recovery from addiction will be able to know where recovery residences are available to them. I hope it be the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
HB 2129. It is a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to the Board of Nursing application for license or certification, military spouse, expedited review. The bill is reported for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions with amendments.
The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2129 seeks to ease the transition of military families moving to Virginia and getting back to work quicker. The bill will define the Board of Nursing's requirement to expedite the application for licensure or certification by the board for a spouse of an active duty military. I hope it's the will of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to third reading.
Committee amendment.
I submit the committee amendment.
Shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. That committee amendment is agreed to.
Continuing with the block on page 24 of the printed calendar, next up is House Bill 2137. It is a bill to amend and react multiple sections of the Code of Virginia, all relating to persons who are deaf or hard of hearing terminology. The bill is reported to the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions with amendments.
Delegate from Stafford, Delegate Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee amendments.
Shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee amendments are agreed to. Delegate Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the clerk mentioned, this bill throughout Code of Virginia removes the term hearing impaired, which is offensive to our friends in the hearing impaired, hard of hearing and deaf community. So I hope that we engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
House Bill 2183 is a bill to amend and reenact sections of the Code of Virginia relating to commercial vehicle training and testing. The bill is before the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
Delegate from Botetourt, Delegate Alston.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Committee substitute is agreed to. Delegate Alston.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 2183 is a third-party testing driver's license CDL bill. Because of federal regulations, we've gone from about 40 testing sites down to 9 in Virginia. This will simply expedite the testing process. So I'd ask that the bill be engrossed and moved to its third reading.
House Bill 2215 is a bill to amend and reenact section of the code relating to required immunizations, a cellular pertussis booster. Bill is reported for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
Delegate Richardson, Delegate Bagby.
Take that.
Mr. Speaker, I believe that bill was supposed to go back for the day.
He wants to move.
Okay. You take it. Shall the bill go by for the day?
I moved it. Right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I moved that the bill go back for the day.
A motion is for the bill to go by for the day. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The bill goes by for the day.
Okay. House Bill 2226. Try again. A bill to designate the bridge on Meadow Road over Interstate 64 at mile marker 202 in Henrico County, the Trooper Mark Barrett Memorial Bridge. The bill is reported for the Committee on Transportation.
The delegate from Henrico, Delegate Bagby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. House Bill 2226 designates the bridge on Meadow Road over Interstate 64 at mile marker 202 in Henrico County, the Trooper Mark Barrett Memorial Bridge. Trooper Barrett died in the line of duty on September 14, 2010. I hope it will be the will of the body to honor him and engross this bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Continuing with the block on page 26, next up is House Bill 2228, a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the code relating to composition of the boards of nursing and psychology health regulatory boards, staggered terms. The bill is reported for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
The delegate from Henrico, Delegate Bagby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, HB 2228 restaggers the expiration dates of regulatory board members by authorizing one or more appointments in certain years for terms of less than 4 years and redesignate membership requirements on the Board of Nursing and Psychology. I hope it will be the will of the board to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
House Bill 2230, a bill to amend and reenact sections of the code relating to property and motor vehicle insurance, use of credit scores, adverse actions. The bill is reported to the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Delegate from Henrico, Delegate Bagby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 2230 clarifies what constitutes adverse action in the use of credit in the credit ratings and underwriting of homeowner and private passenger automobile insurance. I hope it will be the will of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
House Bill 2284 is a bill to amend and reenact section of the code relating to providers of debt management plans, exempt entities. The bill is reported for the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Delegate from Portsmouth, Delegate Heretic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 2284 would exempt banks, savings institutions, and credit unions from the separate licensing requirements of Chapter 20 of Title 6.2 of the Code, which provides for the regulation of agencies that provide debt management plans and services. I hope it be the will of the House to engross the bill and pass it to its third reading.
Continuing with the block, next up is House Bill 2298 on page 27 of the printed calendar. It is a bill to amend and reenact section of the code relating to the quorum required for a meeting of the Board of Directors of a bank. The bill is reported for the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Delegate from Washington, Delegate O'Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2298 moves the quorum for bank directors down to 3. Currently, the quorum is 5, and you must have at least 5 members. Several banks are having trouble getting a quorum, and so it simply moves that down to 3. I move that we engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
House Bill 2313 is a bill to amend and reenact section of the code relating to comprehensive highway access management standards. The bill is reported to the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
The delegate from Middlesex, Delegate Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Committee substitute is agreed to. Delegate Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 2313 states that the Commissioner of Highways shall require that any official who approves a highway access project shall certify they have applied due diligence in approving such project and that such approval is, in their professional judgment, consistent with the minimum standards in the Comprehensive Highway Access Management Standards. The bill also provides that an appeal of denial, revocation, or conditions of a permit shall be in accordance with current regulation. I hope it will be the will of the body to engross the bill and pass it to its third reading.
House Bill 2345 is a bill to amend and reenact various sections of the code relating to rates for individual and certain group health benefit plans, minimum loss ratios. The bill is reported to the Committee on Commerce and Labor with an amendment in nature of the substitute.
The delegate from Charlottesville, Delegate Toscano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Committee substitute is agreed to. Delegate Toscano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, HB 2345 is about health insurance premiums and protecting consumers. There have been several questions about how much teeth the Bureau of Insurance has to examine after the fact whether insurers have complied with what's called the medical loss ratio, which has an impact on insurance premiums. What this bill does is install certain of the regulations that are presently in place in the code into the code, and it also includes some additional language that will allow the Bureau of Insurance to issue rebates in the event that consumers have not been protected and the insurance rates are not justified by the numbers. I move that we engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Continuing House bills on second reading, uncontested calendar block on page 28, House Bill 2419. It is a bill to amend and reenact section of the code and repeal another, all relating to banks' capital stock. The bill is reported to the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Delegate from Newport News, Delegate Yancey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, House Bill 2419 makes it easier for new bank formations in the Commonwealth of Virginia by removing restrictions. Mr. Speaker, I move the House pass the bill and move it to its third reading.
House Bill 2556 is a bill to amend and reenact a section of the code relating to the Department of Health Professions and Health Regulatory Boards, information obtained in an investigation or disciplinary proceeding, authorized disclosures. Delegate Plum's bill is reported for the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Plum.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 2556 allows the Department of Health Profession and Health Regulatory Boards who gain information obtained in an investigation or disciplinary proceedings to share that information with others who might be looking at violations of civil proceedings. It will be a pleasure to the House to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
House Bill 2557 is a bill to amend and reenact sections of the code relating to Drug Control Act, Schedule 5, gabapentin, reported from the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
Delegate from Washington, Delegate Pillion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill classifies gabapentin as a controlled substance. I move the bill be engrossed and passed to the third reading.
And turning to page 29. Page 29, completing out the block, House Bill 2639, which is a bill to amend and reenact multiple sections of the Code of Virginia, all relating to healthcare shared savings, required disclosures by healthcare providers, and health insurance incentive programs. Bills reported to the Committee on Commerce and Labor with amendment nature substitute.
Delegate from Bedford, Delegate Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The committee substitute is agreed to. Delegate Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2639 is an innovative approach to bring transparency to health care prices and put downward pressure on prices. Also known as shared savings, this legislation gives patients the ability to shop for health care, rewarding those consumers who choose high value and lower cost care. I want to acknowledge my chief co-patron, Delegate Toscano, for his support this year of this legislation. I hope it'd be the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Shall the bills be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Bills are engrossed and passed to third reading.
Mr. Speaker, continuing with the calendar, House bills on second reading regular, page 29 of the printed calendar. 3 bills in this category, beginning with House Bill 2253, which is a bill to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to non-resident concealed handgun permits, time of issuance. The bill is reported to the Committee on Militia, Police, and Public Safety with amendments.
Delegate from James City, Delegate Pogge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee amendments.
Delegate for Fairfax, Delegate Simon, would you like to speak to the committee amendments, or would you like to speak to the
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion on, I think, the bill and the amendments. So could I make that motion now? I think might be the right time to do that.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, my motion would be that House Bill 2253 on page 29 of the calendar be re-referred to the Committee on Appropriations. I'd like to speak to that motion.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, what this bill does is it creates a deadline for the Virginia State Police and specifically the folks at the Firearms Transaction Center, which is located within the Criminal Justice Information Services Division, to turn around out-of-state applications for concealed carry permits. So these are folks that send in from out of state to apply for a concealed carry permit. And currently, state police say they get that done in about 140 to 150 days. This bill would move that to 90 days. And I asked the state police how they would do that without a budget amendment, without any new personnel, without any new positions. And they said that there are a couple of ideas. There's a grant that might help speed things up to do some automation of the process. But ultimately, if they had to meet that new deadline, they might have to pull people from other parts of CGIS. And that would include the Sex Offender and Crimes Against Minors Registry and the Virginia Missing and Exploited Children Hotline. So I don't think any of us would like to see the state police pulling folks from the Sex Offender Registry and the Missing Exchange Exploited Children Hotline to process those applications. So I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to re-refer this to appropriations so they can figure out how they might reallocate resources to meet these new demands.
Delegate from Suffolk, Delegate Jones.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the motion.
Delegate has the floor.
I would ask that we would reject the motion. There is no need for this to come to appropriations. There's no fiscal impact. They have not raised any concern with the appropriation staff. They know the routine very well. They come to my office multiple times throughout the year asking for money if they need something. So I'm quite comfortable with this bill proceeding, moving forward, and I think we'll be in really good shape.
Shall the bill be referred to the Committee on Appropriations? All those in favor of referring House Bill 2253 to the Committee on Appropriations, so say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes, okay, division's called for. Shall the bill be referred to the Committee on Appropriations? I thought I had, okay. Yeah, sorry. Shall the bill be referred to the Committee on Appropriations? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 46, noes 50.
Ayes 46, noes 50. The motion fails. So I think we were on the committee amendment. Yes. Delegate Pogge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like a chance to explain the bill now.
We still need to adopt the committee amendment. So you might have already moved it. I don't remember. Would you move the committee amendment for me?
I moved the committee amendments.
Shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Committee amendment is agreed to. Delegate Pogge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 2253 directs the Department of State Police to issue a concealed handgun permit to a non-resident within 90 days. of receipt of the application. Currently, it does take 5 to 6 months to receive a permit. In 2017, the VSP received a federal grant to automate many of the processes of its V-Check system. The V-Check system is used to process and approve concealed weapon permits application. The funds are there to upgrade the system. Currently in Virginia, with our modern technology, multi-state criminal background checks are available almost immediately for preschool teachers, daycare employees, emergency medical personnel, foster care and adoptive parents, and many other areas where they are needed. I move the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
The delegate from Alexandria, Douglas Levine.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask the patron of the bill some questions.
Will the delegate yield for a question?
Yes.
Delegate yields.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask the delegate whether the Virginia State Police indicated that they supported this legislation.
The Virginia State Police, when I asked for the amendments, had a lot more comfort with the bill, and that's what he told me. And also the amendments, I'll explain. Initially, the bill was for 45 days. It was amended for 90 days with a delayed enactment clause that delays the enactment of the bill until October 1st. So they have 9 more months to prepare to start processing these more quickly.
Follow-up question, Mr. Speaker.
Delegate yield for another question. The delegate yields.
Did the Virginia State Police say they support the bill now?
No.
I would ask the delegate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill at the appropriate time.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the body. So the Virginia State Police do oppose this bill, and they testified in committee that it would take 120 to 150 days to process all of these out-of-state concealed carry permits. Out-of-state, out-of-resident concealed carry permits for Virginia are rising all across the nation. People in states all across the nation really want to use Virginia's system. And they want to use it because it requires very little effort. They can go online. They don't even have to watch the safety video. They answer 20 multiple choice questions. Boom, they get it. They don't get it. They just take the test again. Pay $100 and they get it. I've actually talked about this in different places around the country. I've talked about this with the National Rifle Association because in Colorado, they have training requirements. In many, many other states, the people who possess firearms say, you know what, I think you ought to be trained in order to possess a firearm. I think you should have touched a gun before you get a permit. I think you should know how to shoot one. I think you should know, for example, that if you empty a handgun, there's still one in the chamber. They don't think that Virginia goes far enough. Now, I recognize there are many folks here that think quick online multiple choice test, never have to touch a gun, that's just fine. That's a disagreement we have in the chamber. So I'm going to appeal to something else on the other side. I'm going to appeal to Virginia gun owners. Do you want your permit delayed because someone in Idaho or Colorado or Massachusetts or Alaska is getting theirs first? For Virginia gun owners, why should you have to wait while we use our taxpayer resources to serve people from other states? So even if you disagree on the policy, even if you believe that we should have the lowest common denominator, even if you believe that we should have no training whatsoever, why are we denying Virginia gun owners the chance to get their permits done on time? After all, there's no more money for the process. So they'll be helping others at the expense of our constituents. I urge everyone to vote no on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Excuse me. Delegate from James City, Delegate Pogge.
Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that
Speaking to the bill. Speaking to the bill.
Speak to the bill.
Delegate has the floor.
It's my understanding that the criteria for receiving a non-resident CHP or a resident CHP is no different. And the non-resident CHP applicants must pay a fee of $100 to get their permit.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Bill is engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Turning to page 30 of the printed calendar, House Bill 1693 has been re-referred to the Committee on Education. House Bill 1635 has been taken by for the day. Therefore, the next bill is on page 31 of the printed calendar. It is House Bill 1812, a bill to require the Department of Medical Assistance Services to amend waiver eligibility criteria to allow dependents of foreign service members to remain on waiting lists for services when assigned outside of the Commonwealth. Bills reported from the Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions with amendments.
Delegate from Arlington, Delegate Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee amendments.
Shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Committee amendments agreed to. Delegate Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the body, House Bill 1812 directs DMAS to amend eligibility criteria for waivers to allow dependents of a foreign service member to maintain their position on the Medicaid waiver waiting list while they are overseas serving our nation. It will be a pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Bill is engrossed and passed to its third reading.
And Mr. Speaker, lastly, House Bill 2260. It is a bill to amend the Code of Virginia relating to health insurance catastrophic plans. Bill supported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Delegate from Chesterfield, Delegate Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, House Bill 2260 will just authorize health carriers to offer catastrophic health plans on the individual market to all individuals. The measure will also require the Commissioner of Insurance to apply for federal government for a state innovation waiver allowing the implementation of this provision. I ask the House to engross this bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
Mr. Speaker, that completes today's calendar.
Per Rule 51, the House is returned to the morning hour. Does the clerk have any additional announcements or communication?
Just the meeting schedule for this afternoon and Monday morning. It is as follows. The Committee on Courts of Justice will meet immediately upon adjournment of the House in the House Committee Room. Courts of Justice will meet immediately upon adjournment in the House Committee Room on the ground floor of Pocahontas. That's a change in time and in location. On the upside, Courts of Justice Subcommittee 1 and 2 will not be meeting today. The 1/2 hour after adjournment.
Delegate from Albemarle, Delegate Bell.
I've been advised we need to push the Courts of Justice meeting back to 30 minutes after the end of session. Sorry about that.
We will change the calendar schedule here accordingly, but courts will meeting a half hour after adjournment, 30 minutes upon adjournment here, approximately 12:45, 12:50. Also a half hour after adjournment, the Committee on Education, Subcommittee number 2, will be meeting. That's chaired by Chairman Pogge. They'll be meeting in House Room 3 in the extension. That's an additional meeting. Change in location and in time. So half hour after adjournment, Education Sub 2 will be meeting, House Room 3. Appropriations today is canceled. However, half hour after adjournment of the House, Appropriations Elementary and Secondary Education Subcommittee will be meeting in the shared committee room. And then once they're finished, Appropriations Higher Education Subcommittee will be meeting. Both those meetings in the shared committee room on the ground floor. Those are the only 4 different meetings going on this afternoon. Looking ahead to our return on Monday, I would note that this is the last weekend to go home prior to your statement of economic interest being due on February 1st, no later than February 1st. So if you have not filed those or prepared or worked on them yet, this might be a time to continue on with that. Looking ahead bright and early on Monday at 7 a.m., Committee on Education, Subcommittee number 3. They will be meeting in the House Committee room, which is on the ground floor of Pocahontas. That's a change in time. Ed Sub number 3, chaired by Chairman Leftwich, is at 7 a.m. At 7:30 in room 200B, we'll be talking with legislative process or any members, staff, whoever, for issues that might be coming up. That's in 200B. At 9 o'clock, once the committee on subcommittee number 3 is finished, the full committee on education will be meeting. That's at 9 o'clock on Monday. That's a change in time for the committee on education, which will be meeting in the House committee room. At 8:30, the Committee on Finance will be meeting, shared committee room, ground floor. At 10 o'clock on Monday, the Committee on Science and Technology meeting in House Room 3 and the extension. Democratic Caucus, Mr. Speaker, will be meeting at 11 a.m. on Monday in House Room 2. 11, and the Republican caucus meet at 11 a.m. on Monday as well. Both caucuses will meet at 11, and we'll have that reflected here momentarily. Mr. Speaker, please announce.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, we are joined in the gallery today by some Virginia Studies students from Lemon Road Elementary School. If you all would like to rise. These are folks, fourth graders from Lemon Road Elementary in Fairfax County, are here to see how we do things in the Virginia General Assembly. They came in about 2 minutes after their delegate spoke, so I hope we give these folks a nice, warm House welcome.
We'd certainly like to welcome the elementary school students from Fairfax. The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to reconvene Monday, January 28th at 12 noon.
The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert, moves that when the House adjourns today, adjourn to reconvene Monday, January the 28th at 12 noon. This meeting is in favor of that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House to now adjourn.
The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert, moves the House to now adjourn. All those in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. The House stands adjourned until Monday, January 28th at 12 noon.